Jubilee gets 30–40% of the Western Kenya vote, then that is a bigger concern. Number two, the perception out there is that despite the electronic issues, that you did not still have the quantitative vote. So NASA is on the back foot. It is the back foot for political parties will be true, and they will lose the election. So that reality needs to begin to settle. You look at politics always from a worst case scenario. Will Munya affect the election? Even if it's one, it's a two-horse race. Yeah. So imagine if it's a dead heat and it's one vote, and in Meru it's just Munya's vote that makes the difference.
I think on my part, these defections, I think it's a matter of time before we know whether they are going to yield into something substantial, based on the fact that you see some of these people who are defecting. First of all, they are driven by that agenda, their own personal agenda, based on the fact that most of these defectors, you will see they are losers. They lost on the first part of the election. And therefore, they are trying to some sort of redeem themselves. So the question will be going to be a plus for Jubilee. Yes. As for Munya, if he is able to convince the about 230,000 votes that he got in Meru, then that's going to be a plus. So it's a question of whether these people who have defected are going to convince the people who voted for them to move. But you remember, there are these perceived areas that are strongholds of either Jubilee or this is a stronghold of NASA. That is going to be entrenched even further as we go into this election. Because remember, right now, the horse, as it stands, the race has been reduced to a two-horse race, unless the court rules otherwise based on a court petition.
There's this one thing that Kenyans will always hear after defection, and the defectors are asked to address the media. They will say that we are defecting because we are looking for development. And that argument keeps coming up over and over again. Yesterday, I had one of the leaders ask that, do you only get development when you're supporting the ruling party? Has this become a trend in this country?
Obviously, when you are self-seeking to aggrandize from a personal level, you're also seeking development from a personal level.
Is it development for yourself or for your people?
Development for yourself, because you look at the way people are defecting, and look at the rate of defections. They are from the opposition perceived strongholds to the government. Because as it stands, of course, the government has an upper hand in terms of the resources, in terms of the machinery. And you can see right now, NASA is trying to raise funds by asking its supporters. So obviously, and these are losers. Some of them are highly mortgaged, highly indebted, and they have to find a way on how to recover. So they have to run to a place where they'll be able to find solace.
I'd like to address one constituency that has been rejected. 400,000 people voted for rejected votes. That was number 3 in the election. So one of the things that I'm seeing very little interest on is what are the politicians doing to capture these 400,000 votes. 400,000 votes in a two-horse race is significant. It is an entire constituency. So how educated are your voters is the other question that we are asking. Now, in terms of what value do defections bring, of course, the face value is important. Now, let me put on my communication strategy start. When you are a political party and it seems that more and more people are joining you, then it will follow that people will think you have got more might, more clout, and therefore it draws the perception that you're winning. That is definitely going to happen. And, of course, in that place, you've got to give advantage to Jubilee, and that is the blessing of incumbency. Okay? Now, the question then becomes, and this is tricky. You know, before the elections came, we had pollsters that were telling us what the percentages are. They all have egg on face, so no one, I don't think anyone is going to do a poll this time around. So the question is, what information will they be running on to make these decisions? Because if you remember the results of the August 8th, okay, we can see that Jubilee had significant gains in Kisii, in Luyaland, and even in parts of Coast, okay? Now, and Masailand, they took Masailand in, as well. Both governors are from from Jubilee. Now, the question is going to be, is Jubilee going to be able to hold these areas? Are they going to be able to hold the Kisii percentage that they had, the Luya percentage that they had, and the percentages at the coast? That is the question. And that is why you're seeing this mass movements. These mass movements are an effort to bolster the campaign effort in Luya land, in coast, and in all these places where people are defecting from. That is the reality. That is what they are pushing for.
Do you think the strategy will work? What should be the perfect counter strategy for NASA here?
Well, here's the thing. You see, if you look at the balance of numbers, okay, what NASA needs to do is it needs to hold its support base to the 90-95% range. Anything less than that, if Jubilee gets above 20%, in Western Province, NASA is in trouble. If Jubilee gets above 15% in Lower Eastern, NASA is in trouble. That is how the games play. So NASA has to hold its vote down to the last man. If it does not do that, I'm sorry to say, they're looking at a loss.
What would be your advice for a counter strategy for NASA here?
I think to counter Jubilee and the inroads that I've made, NASA has... there are certain things that have happened in terms of the elections that have really made Jubilee to go back to the drawing board. And you remember, right after the decision was rendered, the president couldn't sit down. He had to get out there and start campaigning already. That in itself was a serious blow to Jubilee. So if NASA wants really to gain in terms of harvesting votes, they need to capitalize on what happened. They need to propagate this agenda that has been perpetuated by the court decision and tell Kenyans what really happened, because they will be able to win some sympathy in terms of telling the Kenyans that, you know what, we won, but our victory was stolen based on the fact that...
We're already seeing that happen.
Yes, and that is it. The other strategy that they are doing in terms of raising finances, it's a very good strategy, but they need to repackage it in the sense that let it be a people-driven initiative, such that they are able to tell people that, you see what, we are coming to you the way we are, and we need your support. In fact, we don't have money, we don't have state machinery, but we believe that with your support, we are going to win. Those are some of the strategies that they need to apply.
All right, gentlemen, I'd like us to end there. Titus Mahanu is a lawyer. Mark Bichachi is a political analyst and communication strategist. Many thanks for joining us. Remember, we continue to engage with you on the social media. We asked you whether you think pressure from Jubilee and NASA is distracting the IEBC from delivering on its mandate. So far, 59% of you say yes, you think that pressure is hindering IEBC from delivering, and 41% of you say no, you really don't think there is pressure on the IEBC. Let's take a look at one or two of your comments before we take a look at international news. Martin Zeshigan says, IEBC itself is messed up. The commissioners must speedily convince Kenyans they can be trusted for elections. Joel Otuoma says, as much as there's pressure, they are also not genuine among themselves. Cipriano Tiano says, yes, they want him to resign to create room for constitutional crisis to take power by all means. Nyongenanda says the 5 commissioners are not interested in fair, credible elections, but a Jubilee win. Shame on them. We also have Sami, who says, from what I see, NASA isn't putting much pressure on IEBC, but it's up to IEBC itself to make up its house in order to address issues that are being raised. And finally, Rachel Angela says they should not have taken their work seriously in the first place. Those are your views on Twitter. We'll be taking a look at a number of them just before the tail end of the show. But quickly, let's take a look at news making headlines beyond our borders. Hurricane Irma left a wake of damage on the northern coast of the Dominican Republic on Thursday as a disastrous storm swept through the Caribbean with about 300 kilometers per hour winds. The National Hurricane Center has said Irma remains an extremely dangerous Category 5 storm as it takes aim at the Turks and Caicos Islands and Florida, where it is expected to land as a powerful Category 4 on Sunday. Authorities in the Dominican Republic ordered evacuations in towns along the northern Atlantic coast, such as Cabarete, a thriving tourist spot where trees were brought down by high winds, but no severe damage was reported. The Syrian army has blamed Israel for targeting a military site in Hama province early on Thursday, which a war monitor said could be linked to chemical weapons production. According to an army statement, the airstrike killed 2 soldiers and caused damage near the town of Masyaf. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which monitors the war, said the strike